Hey guys, tonight we're spending an entire, slightly sweaty afternoon in an 18th century Caribbean apothecary, a place where powdered coral gets prescribed like aspirin. Molasses counts as medicine, and yes, the cat may or may not have eaten the leeches. You're about to step into the warm, humming streets of colonial Bridgetown, Barbados, where the walls sweat more than the customers and absolutely nothing smells the way it should. Between patients with boils, sailors fainting from heat stroke, and whispered love potion requests, you'll find yourself elbow deep in jars, gossip, and questionable cures. Let's be clear, you probably won't survive this. Between the malaria, the mercury, and the alarming frequency of prescribed pigeon droppings, it's fair to say you're not getting out of this day with modern health standards intact. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from some corner of the world, tell me your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing where you all drift off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge slowly down the sun-bleached main road of Bridgetown, your shoes coated in a thin mix of dust and cane syrup from some unlucky cart accident earlier. It's somewhere around 2 o'clock, though your pocket sundial, yes, you're the sort to have one, refuses to work when drenched in sweat. The air is thick, soupy, and tastes faintly of tamarind, charcoal, and something you hope isn't horse. Children dart past you in linen shifts, laughing as they chase a hoop made from an old rum barrel. Somewhere nearby, someone is either playing a flute or attempting to strangle a duck. You follow a cracked coral stone wall until you see it, a narrow, blue-shuttered shop with a sign swinging lazily in the breeze. It reads, Farnsworth's Emporium of Physic, Tonics, and Curiosities. You hesitate at the door, not from nerves, but because the doorframe is oddly sticky. Pine sap? Sugar water? Historical mysteries. You push it open. Immediately, you're hit with a wall of scent so confusing it might be illegal in some countries. Cloves, molasses, camphor, musty parchment, and something unmistakably fishy, like cod left in a cupboard of cinnamon for too long. The air inside is marginally cooler than the street, to a lazily turning ceiling fan made from palm fronds and repurposed ship parts. Still, you're already sweating in places you didn't know could sweat. The apothecary's interior is a glorious mess. Wooden shelves line every wall, groaning with glass jars, paper-wrapped packets, and ceramic pots labeled in Latin, French, and what may be wishful spelling. There's a scuffed weighing scale, a mortar the size of a melon, and a faded anatomical chart of the human digestive system, most of which appears to take place in the spleen. A bell dings softly behind you, although you didn't touch anything. Ghost bell? Haunted clove jar? Hard to say. A loud harumph startles you. From behind a curtain beaded with strings of dried allspice and lemongrass steps a man of considerable girth and even more considerable opinions, Mr. Farnsworth. A pale, flustered man in his late 50s with a shock of white hair tied loosely in a ribbon, and not one, not two, but 3 waistcoats layered atop each other. You get the feeling he'd wear more if tailoring laws allowed it. "Welcome!" he booms, although the shop is barely big enough to justify the volume. "Not here for a cure, I hope. You look suspiciously well." You start to answer, but he's already turned. muttering about leech jars and that infernal humidity playing games with the bell string again. You drift further inside, weaving through shelves of dried orange peel, pickled gooseberries, ground blue copers, and a bowl labeled snail ash, do not taste. A moth flits past your ear, possibly drunk on opium vapor. There's a peculiar comfort to the chaos, the kind of place where every item has a story, and every drawer might contain either peppermint lozenges or powdered batswing. Historians still argue whether colonial apothecaries like this were more useful than harmful, but one thing's for sure, they never lacked enthusiasm. A boy in the corner is sorting dried herbs into little muslin sachets. He looks 12, possibly named Tobias, and is chewing thoughtfully on a quill. You make a note to stay away from anything he's packaged. You notice a small shelf devoted entirely to local remedies, calabash tinctures, tamarind plasters, a sun-faded pamphlet titled On the Medicinal Use of Ground Mango Pit in Hysterical Women. One jar proudly labeled sea moss syrup for virility and virtue catches your eye. You look away. A distant clatter announces someone entering from the back room. You catch a glimpse of a cane-woven stretcher and a bowl filled with what appeared to be dried toads. Business is booming. Suddenly a shriek, sharp but dignified, echoes from just outside. You and Farnsworth both turn. The door bursts open again and in strides a woman dressed in an alarming amount of satin for this climate. "Mr. Farnsworth," she cries, "my husband is burning up again, and your bark water did absolutely nothing." Ah, customers. But you're not here for them. Not yet. You find a small, worn stool wedged between a barrel of sulfur powder and a sack labeled medicinal turmeric, not for curry. You sit. You wipe your forehead. You let the scent of this strange little world settle around you like a damp, comforting blanket. You're not sick, yet, but you're here, and it's going to be a long afternoon. The door swings shut behind the satin-draped woman, slapping the air like a lazy drummer. She's still talking, barely stopping for breath, and Mr. Farnsworth, bless him, listens with the vacant expression of a man who's been doing this exact dance 3 times a week for 12 years. "I told you," she says, lifting her chin. "He began to sweat like a pig after dinner last night, and then he began to shiver, Farnsworth, like some wretched chimney sweep. That Jesuit's bark you sold me did absolutely nothing." You glance at her from your stool. Her gown is sky blue with little embroidered pineapples, and the heat has plastered it to her arms in a way that no amount of lace can disguise. A feather droops sadly from her hat. She smells faintly of powdered sugar and indignation. "Perhaps," Farnsworth offers delicately, "he should take the bark with a bit of lemon juice. It encourages the alkaloids, or so the Portuguese claim." Historians still argue whether anyone in the colonies truly understood how quinine, extracted from cinchona bark, worked, or if they simply threw it at every fever like a herbal Hail Mary. Either way, Jesuit's bark had become the darling of the Caribbean elite, who used it for everything from malaria to garden headaches, and occasionally to excuse an afternoon nap. "I don't have lemon juice, Farnsworth," the woman huffs. "Do I look like I run a citrus farm? Do I?" You're not sure if this is a rhetorical question, so you stay very, very still. "Then lime, perhaps?" Farnsworth offers with a slight bow, motioning toward the counter. "I can prepare a fresh bark infusion with lime syrup and a dash of clove. It will go down smoother, and I dare say your husband will be right as rain in a day or two." "Right as rain," she repeats flatly, "in Barbados." That gets a wheeze laugh from the boy in the corner, who immediately pretends to be coughing. She snaps open her fan, ostrich feathers, and waves it with the furious precision of a Spanish naval maneuver. "Very well, prepare it. And I want double the dose this time. I'm not paying for a weak tincture again. I've got 3 dinner parties this week, and I'm not dragging a sweating invalid into polite society again." Farnsworth smiles with the gentle condescension of a man who knows exactly how far he can push his mark. "Double it is, madam, though I must advise against exceeding a dram per hour. Some report heart palpitations." She sniffs. "His heart palpitates whenever he sees the rum bill. I think he'll survive." She flutters to the counter and begins rooting through her embroidered handbag, likely for a purse or possibly a small pistol. Hard to say with these people. Farnsworth turns to you with a grimace only you can see. "Would you hand me the red jar just there behind you, marked Cortex Cinchona?" You do as asked. The jar is heavier than expected, and the inside smells like bitter earth and citrus zest left too long in the sun. He measures out the bark with practiced fingers, mixing it with hot water from a small kettle and a splash of viscous amber syrup from a green glass bottle labeled Limonata. You watch as the bark swirls in the beaker, turning the water the color of weak tea. Steam curls upward, perfuming the shop with a scent oddly reminiscent of old cedar chests and summer rain on dry stone. Farnsworth doesn't just hand over the concoction. No, he packages it theatrically, decanting it into a flask with a wax seal and a loop of ribbon. You half expect him to add a scroll and a riddle. She snatches it up, drops 2 silver coins on the counter, and flutters out with a huff, her ostrich fan wagging behind like a nervous tail. When the door finally closes again, the room exhales. Farnsworth looks at you and raises one bushy eyebrow. "She'll be back Thursday. She always is." You nod sagely. "Let me guess. He'll have a rash." "Or she will. You never know with that lot." He chuckles and leans on the counter. "We call it plantation syndrome. A touch of fever, a hint of guilt, and far too much Madeira." The boy coughs again. Definitely not sick, just bored, and drops a sachet of anise onto the floor. He doesn't pick it up. You rise from your stool to stretch your legs, weaving through a rack of hanging roots that bump gently against your shoulder. The whole place hums with that sleepy tension of somewhere halfway between chaos and control. You pass a wall of labeled glass bottles. Elix camphorae, Spitter ammoniae, Tinctus jalapa, and wonder how many of them would be illegal under modern pharmaceutical laws. Most, probably. One bottle catches your eye. Vinegar of 4 thieves. Farnsworth notices your interest. "Ah," he says, "a recipe from France. Legend has it, 4 criminals used that vinegar to avoid the plague while robbing the sick. Garlic, rosemary, and a touch of wormwood." "And it works?" you ask. He shrugs. "Not for the plague, but excellent on cabbage." You grin, and for a moment you almost forget how hot it is. Outside, the sun hasn't moved, but the shadows are longer now. The road is quieter, except for the occasional shout from a distant market vendor or the cry of a gull that sounds exactly like someone trying to imitate a gull. Probably a gull. Inside, things begin to settle. You hear the soft slosh of something boiling in the back room. A cat you hadn't noticed, hops onto a shelf, knocking over a tin marked powdered oyster shells, fine grade. Farnsworth doesn't blink. "She does that," he says simply. "Keeps the mice honest." A soft breeze nudges the shutters, and for a moment the scent of hibiscus sneaks in and mingles with all the others. Not bad, you think. Not bad at all. But the door creaks again, and new footsteps cross the threshold, barefoot, sure-footed, and full of quiet authority. A new visitor has arrived, and things are about to get interesting. You turn just as the curtain of heat parts once more, and someone steps in. Not with the clatter or drama of the Satin Lady, but with a quiet presence that makes the entire room shift. Even the boy stops chewing his quill. The woman is tall, wrapped in a deep indigo dress that speaks more of practice than fashion. Her skin is the color of polished mahogany, her head wrapped in a turban dyed with what looks like turmeric and hibiscus petals. She carries a woven basket in one arm, and as she steps onto the worn plank floor, something in her gait says, this is not her first visit. Farnsworth straightens slightly, just enough to be noticeable. Not nervous, exactly, just attentive. "Miss Amma," he says with a nod, "how do you fare this week?" "Better than your pigeon," she replies dryly, eyeing a feather on the floor by the weighing scale. You snort before you can stop yourself. She glances your way just briefly, and you feel like you've been measured and filed. Not judged, not dismissed, just noted. "I brought the sea almond oil you asked for," she says, stepping forward and placing her basket on the counter. The smell that follows is earthy, nutty, with a floral top note that makes the vinegar of Four Thieves retreat in embarrassment. She begins unpacking. A bottle of the oil, a twist of folded banana leaf with something moist inside, a bundle of dried cerasee vine, and what appears to be a smoked lizard. Possibly decorative, possibly not. Farnsworth lifts the oil bottle, turns it to the light, and grunts appreciatively. "Pressed cold?" she replies. "With a mortar. The stone cracked." He winces like that's his problem now. Miss Amma, you soon learn, is a local midwife and herbalist, feared and revered in equal measure, depending on who's pregnant, who's sick, or who's been cursed. She doesn't barter often, but when she does, the exchange is a blend of science, ceremony, and subtle power plays. "You still owe me from last month," she says mildly, tapping the side of the basket. "The clove oil was 2 ounces over." Farnsworth bows with mock humility. "And you will find a compensatory gift in kind, dried ginger root from the leewards, fiery as ever." She accepts the twist of paper he hands her, sniffs it, and gives the faintest nod. It will do. You pretend to study a jar of mustard seed, but are really soaking it all in. The way she moves, the way Farnsworth defers to her just enough, the way she keeps her thumb on every item as he touches it, like a notary of plants and people. "Who's this?" she asks, motioning toward you. "New," Farnsworth says. "Observing?" she asks you directly. You nod. "Just curious." She smiles faintly. Curiosity needs tea. Boil hibiscus and bay leaf together. Add lime if your thoughts wander. Duly noted. Historians still debate how much traditional knowledge was exchanged, or outright stolen, by colonial apothecaries from local and African-descended healers like Amma. Many formulas found their way into the pharmacopoeia, not with citations, but with convenient discovery stories, written in English with all inconvenient originators erased. Farnsworth pulls out a dusty recipe book and flips to a page marked with a bone sliver used as a bookmark. "I'm looking at refining a fever balm," he says to her. "I'd add cardamom, maybe a touch of camphor, but the oil keeps separating. Any thoughts?" Amma considers. "Heat the oil first. Let it speak before you smother it." You're not entirely sure if that's literal or metaphor, but Farnsworth scribbles it down like gospel. From her basket she draws a clay pot and places it in his hands like an offering. "For the boy," she says. Farnsworth raises an eyebrow. "Tobias?" The boy perks up like a startled ferret. Spots behind his knees. Too much saltfish. Tell his aunt to make green papaya stew for a week. "Ah," Farnsworth murmurs. "That's what that smell was." You realize with some admiration that she knew about Tobias's condition without ever looking at him directly. Then she glances at you again. "Would you like to smell the lizard?" No hesitation. "Of course." She lifts it from the basket. It's smoked, dry, and smells like campfire and ocean floor. Dried for 7 days, used for asthma and nighttime frights, and for keeping gossips at bay, she adds, her eyes twinkling. You don't ask how that works. She rewraps it in a strip of bark cloth and places it back gently. At this point, the shop seems to hum a little lower. Even the jars seem to lean in when she speaks. You wonder how many lives she's saved. You wonder how many recipes in Farnsworth's book started in her hands. Outside, a breeze rattles the shutters. A rooster crows in the distance, clearly confused about the time of day. The street has quieted to its afternoon lull. "Are you staying long?" she asks casually. You shrug. "As long as the afternoon allows." "Then drink something. The air's too thick for dry tongues." She nods towards Farnsworth. "Give him the good tea." He grumbles, but obliges, pouring 3 cups from a ceramic jug kept under the counter. It's room temperature, but smells of lemongrass, sugar cane, and something floral you can't quite place. You sip. It tastes like rainfall on rooftops. Not bad for colonial hydration. Miss Amma finishes repacking her basket. Farnsworth hands her a small pouch of something unmarked. She doesn't ask what it is. He doesn't say. Old trust. Or mutual dirt. Probably both. She glides toward the door, pausing in the threshold. Tell your wife to let the mango ripen next time. Green fruit brings green moods. She says over her shoulder. Farnsworth blinks. I'm not married. She's already gone. The door clicks closed behind her with barely a sound. You lean back against the counter, heart oddly lighter, skin still sticky, head beginning to buzz from tea and herbal fumes. That wasn't just a transaction. That was a performance, a treaty, a spell, maybe. Farnsworth clears his throat. She'll be back in a fortnight. Or sooner if someone breaks a bone. You nod. I liked her. She liked you, which feels like a compliment and a warning all at once. Then the door creaks open again. Someone else steps in. And this one's holding something alive. The new visitor is a stocky man in a loose linen shirt that stuck to his back like a second, less cooperative skin. His skin is sun-darkened, his hair tucked under a fraying tricorn hat, and in his arms he's cradling a muslin bundle that's twitching slightly. You tense. Mr. Farnsworth sighs. Don't tell me, Farnsworth says, already turning back toward the shelf of syrups. Boils again? Boils, the man confirms, his voice like old rope soaked in salt water. Worse this time. Look like little volcanoes. You take a very cautious step closer. Not too close, you're still not that curious. And peek over the man's shoulder at the wriggling bundle. Inside, a small child, maybe 4 years old, is red-faced, glaring, and clearly furious at being bundled like a medicinal sausage. His arms are peppered with red, inflamed lumps. He itches furiously, and despite being half his size, seems entirely capable of punching you in the throat if you so much as blink at him the wrong way. Caught at work on the cane press, the man mutters. Too much heat, too little washing, and maybe a rat or two in the sugar cane pile. You know how it is. Farnsworth sniffs. All too well. The child suddenly lets out a screech that could probably stun fish. Even the cat bolts. What's your name, little one? You ask cautiously, still keeping a safe distance. Dynamite, the child snarls. His name's David, the man says apologetically. He just likes that better. Understandable. Farnsworth opens a drawer labeled Plasters and Peculiars and pulls out a small jar. We could use a mash of rosewater and barley, but I'm afraid we're out of barley. Someone fed it to the mule. You look at Tobias. He whistles and looks at the ceiling. Instead, we'll use the tried and true poultice. He reaches beneath the counter and, with a certain theatrical flair, produces a small tin. Pigeon droppings, mixed with goose grease and a pinch of nutmeg. You blink. Sorry, what now? Perfectly safe, he assures you. Pigeon droppings draw the heat from the boils. The nutmeg masks the smell. The goose grease keeps it from sliding off the patient and horrifying the dog. You make a note never to touch the counter again. He begins preparing the poultice, mashing the ingredients together in a small bowl with the back of a pewter spoon. The result is brown, shiny, and looks distressingly like something that already came out of someone. He scoops a portion onto a linen square and gestures for the child. David, Dynamite, screams again, but this time it's just protest. He kicks, writhes, bites the air like a cornered mongoose. Hold him, Farnsworth tells the father, who now looks mildly traumatized. The poultice is applied. There's a tense moment. David stops moving. He sniffs. He sniffs again. It smells like pie, he says. Farnsworth smiles. That's the nutmeg. The man sighs and slumps onto the nearest stool. You got anything to stop the itching tonight? He nearly climbed the kitchen shelf yesterday trying to scratch with the fish fork. Farnsworth pulls down a bottle of diluted vinegar and another of plantain juice. Mix 1 part of each, dab it on before bed, and keep him out of the cane press. Easier said than done, the man mutters, then produces a few coins and a half-melted sugar loaf as payment. As they're leaving, the child glares at you one last time. I am Dynamite, he growls. Yes, you whisper. Yes, you are. The door swings closed. The room is eerily silent. You realize your shoulders are up around your ears. Is pigeon droppings really common for boils? You ask eventually. Depends who you ask, Farnsworth says, washing his hands with rosewater. The French prefer mashed onions and goose fat. The Dutch recommend clay and salt. Here it's pigeons, because pigeons are free. Historians still debate how often these folk remedies actually worked. Some poultices may have offered anti-inflammatory relief, others simply provided enough of a distraction, burn, sting, or stink, to make the patient forget their original complaint. What's certain is that in hot, humid places like the Caribbean, boils, ulcers, and infected cuts were part of daily life. So were curious cures. Farnsworth begins to rearrange his jars while muttering under his breath about how much goose grease he's going through this month. You wander toward the front of the shop, passing a low shelf filled with wax-sealed pots labeled phlegm extractors, liver paste, un-California free, and one simply marked for things best left unnamed. Behind you, Tobias drops something again, possibly a jar, possibly his patience. You take a moment to lean by the window, letting the sea breeze sneak in through the shutters. The air is thick with heat and humanity. You can hear distant music. Somewhere, someone's drumming against a barrel. The apothecary pulses with life and with lives. Every jar, every bottle is a guess, a hope, sometimes even a joke that happens to work. You glance down at the counter and spot an open ledger, the day's appointments scrawled in uneven ink. You note some of the entries. Mrs. Turnbull, tonic for worry and feet swelling. Ama, sea almond delivery, fever balm advice. Dynamite, again. Captain Delgado, ask about crab shell tonic, question mark, question mark, question mark. You smile. There's something oddly comforting in how disorderly and lived in it all feels. Medicine by instinct, healing by hope, profit when possible. Farnsworth suddenly snaps his fingers. Could you pass me that sack under the table? I think the ginger's starting to sprout again. You bend down and tug it out. It's a lumpy canvas bag, surprisingly cool to the touch. You open it. Ginger roots, all right. One of them is sprouting. Another has a suspicious bite mark. Is the cat again? You ask. Either her or Tobias, Farnsworth mutters, but she cleans her paws. He doesn't. You both glance at Tobias, who is now deep in conversation with the leech jar. There are no leeches inside, just a note that says, temporarily indisposed. You're about to ask what that means when the bell above the door jingles again, softer this time. A new shadow crosses the threshold, and a boy no older than 10 steps in. He's carrying a paper-wrapped bundle and wearing an expression that says, "This delivery went wrong somewhere." "Oh no," Farnsworth says, already rubbing his temples. "It's him." You glance between them, intrigued. "What did you forget this time?" Farnsworth asks. The boy swallows and holds up the package like it's cursed. "I think I brought the wrong root again." The delivery boy's name is Jonah, though Farnsworth often calls him "you again," or, occasionally, the sassafras saboteur. You can see why. The bundle in his hands is already starting to leak a pale yellow dust, which is generally not a promising sign in any pharmacy, 18th century or otherwise. Jonah places the paper package on the counter, like it's carrying a sleeping snake. Farnsworth approaches slowly, eyebrows furrowed in a kind of practiced dread. You and Tobias both lean in, though Tobias does so from behind a barrel, ready to duck. Farnsworth unties the twine and peels back the paper. What emerges is a tangled mass of pale, stringy root with an earthy, musky aroma and a dusting of yellow powder. "This," Farnsworth says solemnly, "is senna." Jonah winces. "I thought you said sarsaparilla." "I said sassafras," Farnsworth sighs, which you somehow interpreted as, "Bring me the laxative root and make sure it's extra crumbly." You suppress a laugh and immediately choke on the scent. The root is pungent, somewhere between mushrooms and old socks. You back away slowly. Senna's for clearing blockages, Farnsworth explains to you, his hands now lightly powdered with regret. A very aggressive remedy, not what I needed for a digestive tonic meant to be sipped gently with port. Jonah shrugs. It looked rooty. Everything looks rooty, Farnsworth snaps. That's why we label things. You can't help but sympathize with the kid, though. The docks are chaos on a good day, and today probably included a goat, a cart accident, and someone hawking pickled starfruit under 3 different names. Apothecarial confusion was inevitable. Still, Farnsworth doesn't yell. He just sighs and starts brushing the senna crumbs into a tin labeled compost or curse. He mutters, "Remind me again, who gave you this job?" "You did." "Regret is the mother of invention," Farnsworth replies, not entirely making sense. Jonah tries to look helpful. "I can go back, or I can just go." "Try again," Farnsworth says, scribbling on a fresh scrap of paper. "Sassafras albidum. Long, reddish, smells like root beer if you breathe deeply and regret your life choices." Jonah grabs the paper like it's a golden ticket, gives you a sheepish look, and bolts out the door before anyone can assign him another errand. You look at Farnsworth. "Sassafras is for," he replies, "everything. Tea, blood purification, toothache, moodiness, snake bites, occasionally shoe polish." Historians still argue whether sassafras was a miracle cure or just the 18th century version of essential oils with better branding. It was immensely popular in the Americas, particularly in the Caribbean, where it was used in everything from beverages to love potions to, somewhat unfortunately, hair tonics that caused mysterious rashes. You're about to ask more when Farnsworth holds up a finger. "I know that face. That's your tell me a weird fact face." He leans closer. "In Martinique, they once used sassafras mixed with ash and goat's milk to treat melancholy. For women. Only women. Men got rum and a nap." You raise your eyebrows. "Sounds about right." He grins. "And in Saint-Domingue, they boiled it with cardamom and licorice root to make a syrup they swore could cure homesickness. Didn't work, but it tasted like happiness." You smile at the idea. Maybe that's all some cures were ever meant to do. Taste like something better. You wander toward the back shelves as Farnsworth begins cleaning up the counter, his movements half muttered complaints, half dance. You pass rows of earthenware jars, orris root, bitter orange peel, crushed coral. One jar is labeled simply "mummy dust?" with a question mark large enough to qualify as medical malpractice. Near the window, you find a shelf labeled "Misfires and Misunderstandings." Inside, a fossilized coconut shell, a bottle of yellow liquid with "Antidote for what?" written in chalk, and a dried frog wearing spectacles. You hold up the frog. Farnsworth doesn't look. "That's Professor Bladderstone. He teaches Tobias what not to do." Tobias gives a solemn nod. Back at the counter, Farnsworth suddenly groans. "Oh, I just remembered. I sent Delgado that crab shell tincture last week." "Is that bad?" "I didn't test it," he muttered. "He said he was in a hurry. Something about inflamed gums and spiritual rot." You raise your eyebrows. "It's rum mixed with powdered crab shell, a little mercury, and clove oil. Could cure gingivitis or summon demons. Hard to tell." You laugh, but he looks only half joking. "Crab shell's a traditional ingredient in some cures. calcium, grounding properties, all that. But the last batch was experimental. You glance at the door. Should we worry about him showing up? Oh no, Farnsworth says brightly. He always sends a messenger first. If the messenger is vomiting or glowing, we know not to let Delgado in. Outside, the light is shifting again. Afternoon is deepening. The sun no longer blazes. It smolders. Shadows stretch across the street like lazy cats, and the buzz of insects begins to rise in a low, hypnotic hum. You lean near the shutter, inhaling the scent of salt and sap and something faintly metallic. Then the bell tinkles again. You both turn. The silhouette in the doorway is not vomiting or glowing. That's the good news. The bad news is it's a Spanish merchant you've seen before, and he's holding a velvet pouch with the kind of smugness that usually precedes a very complicated request. "Senor Farnsworth," he says, removing his hat with an extravagant bow. "I believe we have business." Farnsworth mutters something under his breath. You catch the words "again" and "blasted pirates." Things are about to get delicate. The Spanish merchant steps inside like he owns the air. He smells faintly of tobacco, citrus, and something more exotic, like a cabinet that once held cinnamon but now hides secrets. His velvet pouch dangles from 2 fingers, heavy with whatever makes velvet pouches so troublesome. "Senor Farnsworth," he says again, with a smile that flashes more teeth than sincerity, "I believe you have something for me, or perhaps you no longer do." Farnsworth doesn't flinch. Instead, he picks up a cloth and begins polishing the already clean counter with studied disinterest. "You're early, Delgado." The merchant shrugs, adjusting his vest coat. "My captain says the tide is good. I say the timing is better." You sit back down on your stool, trying not to look like you're eavesdropping, even as your ears perk up like a fox hearing soup being stirred. Delgado leans on the counter. "I trust your shipment arrived safely?" Farnsworth doesn't answer right away. He glances at you, then Tobias, then back to Delgado. "Depends what you mean by safely." "I mean without customs getting curious," Delgado says, letting the velvet pouch drop with a heavy thud. Inside, from the sound of it, are coins, gold ones, possibly smuggled, almost certainly not from around here. You see, Delgado isn't just a merchant, he's what one might call commerce adjacent, sells tobacco and cinnamon legally, dabbles in contraband when the winds blow right, and right now he wants something that isn't supposed to be on Farnsworth's shelf at all. "Cinchona bark," Farnsworth says finally. "I might have a bundle, but you know what the governor would say. The governor doesn't like pirates, but he loves bribes, and this," he taps the pouch, "is a donation to your continued discretion." You shift slightly on your stool, watching Farnsworth weigh his options, or more accurately, watching him weigh the bag of money against the bag of bark that's likely hidden behind the back curtain, behind some less interesting, more legal items like alum and apathy. Historians still argue whether cinchona bark was smuggled more for money or survival. Its value as an anti-malarial made it priceless in places like the Caribbean. The Spanish crown tried to control its trade, claiming a monopoly on the Peruvian trees that produced it. But the bark had a way of traveling anyway, via ship bottoms, spice barrels, and the pockets of men like Delgado. Farnsworth taps a fingernail on the countertop, a soft but pointed rhythm. "And what exactly is your plan for it?" he asks finally. Delgado grins. "I have buyers in Santo Domingo, a few planters, one priest, and, of course, a Frenchman with very bad luck and an even worse complexion." "Why am I not surprised?" "Because you're clever," Delgado says, lifting the pouch again and jingling it gently. "Clever enough to know this is better than your usual fee." Farnsworth sighs. "Fine, but if anyone asks, you came in for sassafras and leeches." "Do you have leeches?" Delgado asks innocently. "No, thanks to Tobias," Farnsworth says without looking at the boy, who immediately hides behind a pile of ginger. With a theatrical sigh, Farnsworth disappears behind the curtain and returns a moment later with a bundle wrapped in banana leaves. It smells sharp, bitter, like earth with an attitude. He places it on the counter with a bit more force than necessary. Delgado doesn't inspect it. He just pockets it in his inner coat and drops the pouch without counting. "Always a pleasure," he says, tipping his hat. "Do take care of that conscience of yours." "Hard to when I keep selling it by the ounce," Farnsworth mutters. As Delgado steps outside, Tobias whispers, "He's got a sword." Of course he has a sword. He looks like a man who practices sword drawing in front of a mirror. "Rumor is," Farnsworth adds as he returns to his jars, "he once fought a duel over a mispriced cinnamon stick." "Did he win?" "No, but he charged the widow interest." The three of you share a laugh, and for a moment the tension breaks like morning mist. Outside, the light has softened, gold seeping over the coral-pink rooftops. The world for a fleeting second feels less complicated than it is. But inside, the business of health, real and imagined, continues. Farnsworth pulls down a small book from a high shelf and begins jotting down today's entries. Under Delgado, he writes, "Sassafras, 1 bundle, definitely not cinchona, paid in velvet gilt." Then, as if remembering something mid-sentence, he glances over at you and says, "You want to see something ridiculous?" "Always." He reaches under the counter and produces a glass bottle filled with something pale green and glittering faintly in the late afternoon sun. "Elixir of life," he says. You raise an eyebrow. "It's not what it sounds like," he admits, though the Dutch swear by it. Contains rum, coral powder, vinegar, and the shell of a very confused crab. "And this cures?" you ask, holding the bottle up to the light. It glistens like bottled mermaid promises. According to some, everything. According to most, a headache and regret. But it makes an excellent party trick. You open the stopper and sniff. It smells like bad decisions wearing perfume. "Can I taste it?" "Absolutely not," he says, snatching it back. "That batch includes fermented starfruit and whatever was in the bottom of Tobias's apron last Tuesday." Tobias grins like that's a badge of honor. The door rattles slightly as a breeze rushes in. The shop feels suddenly still, as if holding its breath between dramas. You realize you're beginning to enjoy the rhythm of it, the absurdity, the barter, the bizarre dance between tradition and survival. You lean against the counter, just as the old cat slinks back in through a high window, looking both smug and sticky. "She was in the alley," Tobias says. "She always is," Farnsworth replies, "looking for missing leeches." You glance down at the jar on the counter, still empty. Another breeze lifts the scent of clove and sea salt from the doorway. The sky outside is deepening into a dull gold. And just as you're considering asking about that mummy dust, the bell chimes again. This time, someone stumbles in and promptly faints. The man hits the floor like a sack of undercooked yams, legs folding under him, hat flying off in a lazy arc, one hand still clutching a damp kerchief like it might save him. He lands with a thud that rattles a few jars and makes the cat yowl indignantly from her perch. Farnsworth doesn't miss a beat. "Oh, good," he says mildly. "Another heat stroke. That's our third this week. Fourth if you count the mule." You jump up instinctively, less from medical training and more from basic human decency, and move toward the collapsed sailor. Because he is a sailor, that much is obvious. Salt-stiffened breeches, skin darkened by wind and sun, hair matted in the specific way that only comes from sleeping near barrels of dried cod. He smells like rum and rope, with a faint trace of something floral you can't quite place. "Help me get him up," Farnsworth says, already pulling a rag from a drawer marked "For Emergencies and Uninvited Collapse." Together you manage to drag the sailor onto a wooden bench beneath the front window. The breeze, faint but loyal, flutters in to greet him. He groans faintly, eyes still closed, face slick with sweat and something that might be powdered sugar, or salt, or both. Tobias reappears with a chipped cup of water, which Farnsworth waves off. "No, not plain water. We need the tea." You blink. "The hibiscus one?" Farnsworth nods. "Hibiscus, bay leaf, pinch of cinnamon. Cool, tangy, and pretends to care about your electrolytes. Local sailors swear by it. Of course, they also swear at it, so it balances out." You hurry to the back counter, find the teapot, ceramic, slightly cracked, painted with faded blue vines, and pour the tea into a small cup. It's a deep, pinkish red, the kind of color that should be illegal in nature, unless it's on a flamingo or a warning sign. You bring it to Farnsworth, who lifts the sailor's head gently and presses the cup to his lips. The man groans again, but manages a sip. Almost instantly he coughs, then blinks again, like someone realizing they've survived both a storm and an ill-timed nap. "Where am I?" he croaks. Farnsworth smiles down at him. "Safe, hot, hydrated, and quite horizontal." The sailor blinks a few more times, then pushes himself upright, his joints cracking like old floorboards. I was just walking from the port, and then the sun went funny." "It does that," you say, "especially after midday." Did I faint in your shop?" "Absolutely," Farnsworth says, pouring him more tea. "Classic collapse, perfectly executed. You nearly took out the shelf of blessed thistle." The sailor chuckles weakly. "That bad, eh? You're lucky you landed where you did," Farnsworth continues. "Another 6 feet and you'd have crushed the vinegar of thieves and Professor Bladderstone. Tobias would have had to mite your eulogy in leech blood." "Would have been poetic," Tobias mutters. The sailor sips again and visibly starts to revive. "Name's Abel," he says eventually. "Abel Mendez. Ship's Cooper. That means barrels. Not to be confused with coopers who do chickens. Common mistake." You nod solemnly. "Thank you for the clarification." "Was hauling 2 hogsheads of fish brine earlier," he explains. "Didn't realize how drained I was till I saw the pink bird." Farnsworth frowns. "What pink bird?" "Don't worry," Abel says, waving vaguely toward the ceiling. "It's gone now." You and Farnsworth exchange a look. "Well," the apothecary says, "either it was heat stroke or he just saw Tobias in one of his weird hats again. That happened once, and it was a carnival." Abel takes another sip of tea, this time with appreciation. "What's in this, anyway?" "Hibiscus petals for cooling, bay leaf for balance, cinnamon for flavor, and a splash of lime juice if you're lucky, or if I like you. Do you like me?" "Undecided." You smile at the exchange. There's something oddly peaceful about watching this ritual. The fainting, the fuss, the recovery, the tea. You get the sense it's happened 100 times before, maybe 1,000. Each time slightly different, each time exactly the same. Historians still debate the effectiveness of traditional Caribbean cooling remedies, but hibiscus tea, sorrel, as it's often called, has long been used to treat overheating, high blood pressure, and general malaise. Its tangy bite combined with its vibrant color makes it both practical and ceremonial, served at festivals and fainting spells alike. Abel, now upright and slightly less pink, begins patting himself down. "Lost my kerchief," he mutters. "You threw it in the air when you fell. Very dramatic." Abel finds it, brushes it off, and tucks it back into his belt. "Appreciate the rescue. I'll pay you proper once I'm paid. We dock tomorrow. Unload spice." "Cinnamon?" Farnsworth perks up. "Nutmeg. And possibly a box of something unlabeled that smells like regret." "So," Farnsworth says, "rum." "Could be." Abel stands, steadier now. He fishes around in his pocket and produces a small square of wax paper. Inside is a cluster of what looks like candied ginger, speckled with something dark. He hands it to you. "For the help," he says. "Made it myself. Grown-up candy. Or sea leg stabilizer. Depends on who's asking." You sniff. Ginger. Clove. And something else. Possibly pepper. Possibly hope. You accept it with a smile. He tips his hat, retrieved from behind the barrel, and makes for the door. "I see that pink bird again, I'll know where to come." And he's gone. Silence settles again. "Well," Farnsworth says, "now that everyone's hydrated and hallucination-free, shall we get back to medicine?" But before you can reply, a strange dripping sound begins near the shelf. Drip, drip. Everyone freezes. You follow the sound to the leech jar, which is now leaking. Or not leaking, squirming. The jar wiggles faintly, and a thin, wet trail begins to snake down the shelf. Farnsworth groans, "Oh no, they're back." You step closer. Sure enough, one leech clings to the inside of the glass, its tiny sucker mouth pressed against the jar like it's about to make a formal complaint. Another is on the shelf, headed straight for a dish of dried apricots. Tobias shouts, "Don't let it in the sugar again!" You blink. Again? Farnsworth is already reaching for the jar, muttering something about brandy and divine punishment. Looks like your quiet afternoon just turned into a rescue mission. Again. The leech situation, as it turns out, is more of a leech migration. And like most migrations, it is driven by a mix of instinct, confusion, and questionable decision-making. The first leech, bold, glistening, and oddly purposeful, has already made it halfway across the counter. Its gelatinous little body undulates with determination as it aims straight for the dried apricot dish, as if trying to reinvent itself as a dessert topping. The second one, still clinging to the inside of the jar, is staging a protest of some kind. It pulses gently with rage or hunger. Hard to tell with leeches. A third one flops dramatically off the shelf and lands on the floor with a damp splat. Tobias shrieks and jumps onto a stool. "Not again!" he wails. "Last time, one of them ended up in the pepper drawer, and Mr. Farnsworth sneezed blood for a week." "That was paprika," Farnsworth mutters, as he grabs a rag and a small set of brass tongs from a drawer labeled "Disasters, small to moderate." You kneel beside the shelf, carefully scooping the floor leech into an empty mortar bowl. It curls into a question mark, as if it too is wondering how life led to this moment. They're not supposed to be this energetic, you say, trying not to flinch as another one drops from the jar like a sluggish acrobat. They're not supposed to be alive this long, Farnsworth says, expertly snagging one mid-slide with the tongs. But someone, he eyes Tobias, forgot to keep the jar in the shade. They fermented. You fermented the leeches? You ask. Tobias crosses his arms. I didn't mean to. I was reorganizing. By putting them next to the cassava spirits? Farnsworth asks. They looked lonely. You glance at the jar, which now smells faintly of warm vinegar and regret. One more leech slips out with a plop. You catch it with a spoon. You're not proud of how natural that felt. Leech therapy, still used in parts of Europe and the Caribbean in the 18th century, was an all-purpose treatment. Bad blood? Leeches. Swollen ankle? Leeches. Broken heart? Probably leeches, or at least a poultice, shaped like one. Historians still debate whether it was ever truly effective, or just medieval wishful thinking with suction cups. What now? You ask, gesturing to the makeshift leech refugee camp forming in the mortar bowl. Farnsworth sighs and retrieves a ceramic basin filled with rainwater and a sprig of mint. He gently lowers each leech into the basin. Give them a rinse. Let them cool off. We'll use them for bruises tomorrow, maybe. The leeches float lazily, either soothed or stunned by the mint. One starts circling like a tiny gummy shark. You wipe your hands on your apron and stand up. Do they have names? Farnsworth doesn't even blink. Only if they survive the week. You glance down at the most vigorous of the bunch. This one's definitely a Reginald. I was thinking Dolores, Farnsworth says, but I'll allow it. Tobias peers over the basin. I think this one winked at me. Not likely. They don't have eyelids or manners. The leeches, temporarily managed, are returned to a shaded corner, far from any heat sources or emotionally unstable delivery boys. Farnsworth places a note on the jar. Do not feed. Do not shake. Do not look too long. That should do, he says, rubbing his hands together. You settle back on the stool, still feeling a little damp and more than a little judged by a jar of invertebrates. Do you actually use them? You ask. Oh yes, Farnsworth replies, mostly for bruises, swelling, and the occasional hypochondriac who demands real bleeding, though the last one fainted when he saw it move. Tobias nods. He said it was like being kissed by a noodle. You shudder. That's going to haunt me. Outside, the light has taken on that dusty golden quality that signals late afternoon is beginning to slide into evening. The street is quieter now. Only the occasional clatter of a cartwheel or distant bark of a dog. The air, still heavy, has calmed just enough to allow breath without a battle. Inside, the shop hums again, less frantic now, more settled, as if the leeches were the apex of today's chaos. Farnsworth pours himself a finger of tamarind cordial and offers you the bottle. You decline. It smells like overripe dreams and licorice. So, he says, what have we learned today? You hold up a finger. Don't feed sassafras to goats. Good. Pigeon droppings have medical applications. Excellent. Leeches can ferment. Unfortunately. And Delgado is probably smuggling medicine. Farnsworth shrugs. At least he's well dressed while doing it. You lean back, eyes half closed. It's warm, yes, but not hostile anymore. Just humid. Just sticky. Just Barbados. Then a sharp rap sounds at the door. 3 quick knocks. Not the bell, the knock. Farnsworth's head snaps around. That's the signal. You sit up straighter. Signal. The one we get when someone wants something not on the shelves. The knock comes again. You look at Tobias. He mouths the word love potion. Farnsworth opens the door slowly. A boy stands there, maybe 16, flushed, fidgeting, holding a small coin pouch, and staring at the ground like it might open up and swallow him before this becomes any more embarrassing. I need something for feelings. Farnsworth nods slowly. Ah, a potion for longing. The boy blushes redder than a hibiscus flower. You whisper to Tobias, "Do these ever work?" He grins. Not as intended, but always with results. Farnsworth turns and pulls down a box labeled Hearts, Foolish. Looks like your next patient doesn't need a leech. Just a little heartbreak. The boy won't meet anyone's eyes. He stands just inside the doorway, shifting his weight from one foot to the other like he's trying to dance away from his own embarrassment. Name? Farnsworth asks gently, already rummaging through a drawer filled with faded ribbon, dried petals, and the unmistakable smell of desperation. The boy clears his throat. Julian. Julian, Farnsworth repeats, as if tasting it. All right then, let's find something that won't kill you and won't get me arrested. Julian blinks. What? I said let's start with something safe, Farnsworth says brightly. You move a little closer, curious about this particular branch of the apothecary's trade. Love potions had always been one of those whispered parts of medical history, half superstition, half chemistry, fully ridiculous. But here it's clearly part of the business. Tobias is already lighting a kettle under a small kettle, and Farnsworth's lined up 3 small bottles and a tin of rose hips. So, Farnsworth begins, is this the kind of longing that keeps you up at night, or the kind that makes you stare dramatically out windows? Julian hesitates. Window. Excellent. That's the safer kind. He starts mixing. A splash of rose water, a pinch of cinnamon bark, 2 dried hibiscus petals, which Tobias crumbles with an overly dramatic flourish. A few drops from a pale blue vial marked Essence of Yearning, mild. Julian watches, wide-eyed. So, you ask quietly, do these actually do anything? Farnsworth shrugs. Mostly, they give the user a bit of courage. Sometimes they smell nice. Occasionally, they're used in a pastry. Has anyone ever, fallen in love? Not because of the potion, but maybe because they finally got the nerve to say something. He drops in a sliver of orange peel. You'd be amazed what a bit of placebo and citrus can do. Historians still debate how widespread and effective love potions were in the early modern world, especially in colonial outposts. Some were little more than perfumes, others heavy with aphrodisiacs or psychoactive herbs. Caribbean concoctions often pulled from both African and European traditions, basil, cinnamon, cloves, and sometimes substances best not spoken of in polite company. Farnsworth stirs the mixture with a cinnamon stick. Now, Julian, do you want something to drink, something to burn, or something to wear? Julian thinks. Burn. Incense. Good choice. Less commitment, more mystery. Farnsworth pours the liquid over a bed of dried petals and herbs, then presses it into a small clay disc. He hands it to Julian along with a wrapped bundle of matches. Burn this under the window tonight. Think clearly, speak kindly, and if that fails, try compliments and humor. Both are free and marginally more effective. Julian clutches the disc like a sacred artifact and hands over 2 coins. One of them might be wooden. He hesitates at the door. Does it work if the person's already sort of promised? Ah, so that's the complication. Julian looks miserable. Well then, Farnsworth says gently, burn half. Leave the rest at a crossroads, and perhaps take up poetry. Julian gives a grateful nod and slips out into the fading light, the door creaking softly shut behind him. You turn to Farnsworth. That was oddly compassionate. Heartache makes fools of us all, he says, recorking the essence of yearning. At least I can sell them something gentle before they move on to stronger medicine. Or rum. Tobias picks up the clay mold scraps and drops them into the bin marked for lost causes and failed flirtations. I tried to write a love charm once, he says. What happened? He shrugs. The ink melted. You sit back, exhaling. The shop smells like rosewater now, layered atop the fading leech funk and the ever-present undercurrent of peppery vinegar. The air feels cooler, or maybe just heavier with the weight of everyone's unspoken wants. I didn't expect so much emotion in an apothecary, you murmur. It's where the body meets the brain, Farnsworth replies, and where the brain desperately tries to outsmart the heart. He moves to the back, pulling a ledger from a high shelf. You glance at it. Request book. Inside are scribbled entries. Charm for ankle swelling, urgent. More gum tonic for Mrs. B, preferably without the dancing side effect. Find recipe for Mr. P's singing syrup. He swears it worked once. You chuckle. Tobias glances out the window. Sun setting. Farnsworth nods, which means the night people will start wandering in soon. You raise an eyebrow. You'll see, he says. Then, as if summoned by cue, the door opens again, slowly, softly. A man steps in, thin, pale, his eyes sunken but alert. He moves like someone used to shadows. He wears gloves despite the heat, and he's carrying a small box, lacquered, red, and wrapped in a black ribbon. Mr. Farnsworth, he says in a voice like crushed velvet, I need something cleansing. Farnsworth's expression changes. Oh, you again. You sit up. Something tells me this won't be about tea. The man with the box doesn't sit. He doesn't even glance around the shop like most customers do, taking in the jars and the cat and the faint whiff of vinegar that no one has ever successfully masked. He just stands there, pale as plaster, clutching his little lacquered case like it contains something alive, or something that used to be. Farnsworth, for once, doesn't reach for a jar. He simply folds his arms and gives the man a long, unreadable look. You never did say what was in that box, he murmurs. And you never asked, the man replies, calm as moonlight. You glance between them, pulse ticking slightly faster. Tobias is frozen mid-sachet pack, clearly recognizing the man and not liking it. The silence is thick. Finally, Farnsworth breaks it. All right then. What sort of cleansing are we talking? Digestive? Dermatological? Or the kind that makes people whisper in the street? The man lifts the lid of the box. Inside, a bundle of dried flowers, wilted, discolored, and very clearly not floral anymore. They're wrapped in a strip of cloth stained with something brownish red that doesn't quite look like sap. The air seems to tighten. I found this under my floorboards after the lodger left. You lean in slightly, curious despite yourself. The flowers, if they were flowers, might once have been bell-shaped. Datura, maybe? Or mandrake leaves? But now they're shriveled, half-dusted with ash, and wrapped in a prayer written in a language you can't read. Farnsworth does not touch it. "Burn it," he says. "I tried," he replies. That gets a long sigh. Tobias mutters, "I don't like this one. He made Mrs. Callender's dog bark at walls for 3 weeks." You glance at Farnsworth. "What is it?" He doesn't answer directly. Instead, he opens a high cabinet and pulls out an unlabeled tin, then a jar of sea salt, and then a candle. Black wax, twisted wick, the kind sold only to people who ask with specific eye contact. "Cleansing," you said. "Let's pretend I believe you." The man just waits. Farnsworth begins the preparation without further prompting. He lines a small bowl with banana leaf, places 3 pinches of salt into the center, and adds a spoonful of dark powder that smells faintly of burnt cinnamon and something metallic. Then he lights the black candle and tips the flame toward the mixture. It doesn't flare. It hisses, like steam from a kettle that's changed its mind. "Now place the flowers inside," Farnsworth says. The man does. The bowl steams again. The scent shifts, earthy, then sharp, then oddly sweet, like scorched sugar cane and regret. You feel something change in the room. Not temperature exactly, not pressure, just mood. As if every glass jar on the shelves is holding its breath. "Leave it until sunrise," Farnsworth says. "Outside, facing east. Then scatter the ashes into moving water. Not the harbor, real water." The man closes the lid. "How much?" Farnsworth gestures. "The usual. Plus your word that whatever you're mixed up in, it stops here. I don't want that sort of foot traffic." The man nods. He sets a coin, silver, old, Spanish, and a folded letter on the counter. "In case I don't make it back," he says. Tobias winces audibly. The man turns and leaves, silent as shadow. The door doesn't even creak. You turn to Farnsworth. What was that? Old magic, bad habits, maybe both. Was that even medicine? Farnsworth's eyes flick to the now burning mixture. In this shop, it's all medicine. Depends on what part of you needs healing. Historians still argue how much African spiritual tradition survived the Middle Passage and wove itself into Caribbean healing practices. The lines between medicine, ritual, and belief were often indistinguishable. Colonists dismissed it as superstition. Healers knew better. You sit back down, the moment still prickling across your shoulders. The candle burns quietly, the smell unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. Just strange, just old. Tobias clears his throat. "Do I need to put a sign on the door?" "Yes," Farnsworth says. "Something polite, but clear. No more cursed bundles after 5. The boy grabs a chalkboard and begins scrawling, muttering to himself. "No leeches, no curses, no onions after lunch. Got it." The shop feels quiet again, but not the easy quiet from before. Now it's the kind of stillness you get after a storm, when the trees haven't decided whether to stand back up. Farnsworth pours you a splash of lemon water. "Sorry you had to see that." You wave it off. "Honestly, it was kind of fascinating." He smiles. That's how it starts. And then 3 years later, you're buying powdered obsidian from a man with 3 teeth and too many riddles. You glance down at the bowl, still steaming faintly. "Do you think it'll work?" you ask. Farnsworth shrugs. If he believes it will, maybe that's enough. Then, suddenly, he squints toward the door. Speaking of things that shouldn't happen twice in a day, you follow his gaze. The door creaks open once again. A man you've never seen before stumbles in, covered in sea salt, eyes wild, boots soaked. "Is this," he pants, "where I get the crab shell tonic?" Farnsworth groans. Oh dear. The man who just staggered in looks like he lost a duel to a wave. His coat hangs off him like a wet rag, his hair is plastered to his forehead, and there's a suspicious trail of seaweed draped over one shoulder, as if he fought his way through a tide pool on the way here. One boot squelches. The other, you're pretty sure it's full of crabs. And the look in his eyes, that's not fever, that's betrayal. "You, Farnsworth," he wheezes. Farnsworth, with the air of someone who's already done the emotional math and come up bankrupt, nods. "That depends. Are you Captain Delgado's courier?" "I was," the man gasps. "Until I drank that tonic." You see Farnsworth's face go through at least 3 stages of polite dread. "He gave him very clear instructions," he mutters, already walking toward the back room. "Very clear. Dilute it 1 spoonful, mixed with rum. Not, he drank the whole bottle," the man says, "straight, in one go." Tobias groans into his hands. "Why?" "He said it tasted like the sea. Thought it was supposed to feel that way too." Then he started coughing. Then he jumped off the dock and shouted something about the gods of the reef. Then he bit a sailor. You blink. "Was the sailor okay?" "Sailor was fine," the man says. "Delgado, however, is now convinced he's a sea crab. He tried to shed his jacket like a shell. He's currently hiding under a dinghy, clicking his fingers at fishermen." Farnsworth reemerges with a cloth and a bottle of what you assume is damage control. "And you drank it too?" "Half the bottle, after he did. I thought maybe it was fortifying." You all stare at him. "Look," the man protests. "He said you were a miracle worker." "I'm a pharmacist, not Poseidon." He sits the man down and checks his pupils. One is slightly bigger than the other. The man also has a barnacle stuck to his collarbone. You decide not to ask. "What was in it?" you whisper. Farnsworth hands you the recipe card. You skim it. powdered crab shell, coral lime vinegar, fermented ginger, a drop of mercury, rum, and optional dash of tamarind if drinker is French. Unclear why. You look up. He drank this raw? Without mixing, Farnsworth sighs. Mercury, diluted, has its place, but not by the gulp. I told Delgado it was experimental. Historians still argue whether mercury was medicine or poison, you mutter. Farnsworth raises an eyebrow. It was both, and neither, depending on how much you drank. Delgado clearly chose the wrong end of that spectrum. You turn to the man again. Are you feeling crabby? He looks up, eyes glassy. I do feel like I want to burrow. Tobias raises a hand. I once had a dream like that. It ended in a rice barrel. No one asked, Farnsworth mutters. He pours the courier a mixture of vinegar, coconut water, and something pungent you're almost sure was scraped off the back of a spoon labeled, "Use only when desperate." The man drinks it reluctantly, grimacing as he swallows. Side effects. Hallucinations may persist for several hours. Try not to swim during them. The man nods solemnly and slumps in the chair. Farnsworth turns to you. Well, then I hope that particular formula is off the menu. You peer at the crab shell mixture. It was supposed to help with gum disease, right? And spiritual imbalance. I may have overcorrected. You pause. So what now? I relabel it as a bath tonic, he says brightly. No one ever reads the instructions on those. You can't argue with that. Outside, the sun is beginning to soften into amber. The shadows lean longer across the street, and the breeze has taken on a cooler tone. A rooster crows half-heartedly in the distance, like it's forgotten what time it is. Again. The man is still twitching gently in the chair. Farnsworth starts cleaning the counter, muttering under his breath. Honestly, I should have known. Delgado never follows instructions. Last time he snorted powdered mint and claimed he could hear colors. Tobias chimes in. To be fair, he did predict a small storm that night. Coincidence? I don't know. He did sound like a barometer. You shake your head and wander to the front window. The glass is thick, distorted slightly, casting everything outside in a sleepy golden glow. You can just barely make out the figure of Delgado down by the docks, crouched under a dinghy, shirtless, gesturing with both hands like pincers. A confused fisherman tosses him a piece of bread. You turn back. What's the antidote for believing you're crustacean royalty, you ask? Farnsworth thinks. 3 hours and some dry crackers. Works for hangovers, too, Tobias adds. You all nod. A universal truth. The courier sips his water. My teeth feel wobbly. Don't touch them, Farnsworth warns. Let the vinegar settle. You'll be fine. Ish. The candle from earlier had burned down to a stub. The strange cleansing mixture now rests in the bowl, a pile of cool ash and still warm salt. Tobias carefully picks it up and carries it outside, holding it like a fragile bird. Crossroads, Farnsworth reminds him. I know. Not the alley behind the tavern again. That only happened once. You nearly summoned 3 goats and a disappointed priest. You shake your head. Is it always like this? Farnsworth smiles. No, sometimes it's weirder. The man in the chair groans softly. Do you have a tonic for confusion and sand in places there shouldn't be sand? I do. It's called a sponge and better decisions. He hands the courier a cloth and a tiny bottle of peppermint oil. Rub this on your temples. If your ears turn pink, lie down. If they don't, lie down anyway. The man stumbles to the door, steadier now, if only marginally. "You're a genius," he mumbles. "Don't say that until you see the bill." The door closes gently behind him. Farnsworth exhales. "Now, no more aquatic transformations today. I need something simple." Just then, the door creaks again. A small girl enters, dragging a wooden cart with one wheel missing. In the cart, a goat, wearing a bonnet. Its ankle is wrapped in what appears to be a sock. "She's limping," the girl says. You stare. Farnsworth smiles. At last, a normal patient. The girl, no taller than your elbow, stands in the doorway with the weary patience of someone who's walked half a mile uphill while coaxing a goat with the stubbornness of 3 mules and the fashion sense of an elderly spinster. The bonnet is pink, with ruffles. The goat looks ashamed. "She's called Henrietta," the girl announces, pushing the lopsided cart forward with a grunt. "She fell in the ditch near the sugar road. Now she limps." Farnsworth kneels to inspect the sock-wrapped leg, completely unfazed. "Henrietta, eh? I treated a Henrietta once. Old widow. Also kicked when scared. This Henrietta kicks when bored, and when I try to feed her anything that isn't mango peel." You lean closer. The goat's ankle is a bit swollen, the joint slightly puffed and warm to the touch, but not broken. There's no bleeding, no oozing, no dramatic evidence of goat-based peril, just a mild sprain and possibly a flair for drama. "I made her a compress," the girl says, proudly lifting a smaller bundle from the cart. It's a banana leaf tied with twine and, upon unwrapping, stuffed with mashed guava, mint leaves, and a generous quantity of what smells like goat saliva. Farnsworth lifts an eyebrow. "Creative." "I asked Miss Alma what to do. She told me to try thinking like the goat, so I sniffed all the herbs we had." "And how long did you think like the goat?" 2 hours. Tobias, perched on a barrel nearby, claps once. "That's twice as long as I've ever managed to think like a person." The girl gives him a squint that could cut timber. "Henrietta's limping hasn't gotten worse, but she seems sad." You crouch beside the goat and meet her eyes. Henrietta stares back, placid and unamused, her ruffled bonnet slightly askew. "She looks resigned," you offer. "She's her content face," the girl insists. Farnsworth gently massages the swollen joint and nods. "Sprain. Light. Could have been worse. She's lucky." "I told her not to run through the cactus again," the girl sighs. "Did she listen?" "She did not." He stands and reaches for a pot labeled "Animal Liniments." Do not taste. Inside is a thick green paste, the color of envy mixed with moss. It's a mix of neem oil, beeswax, comfrey, and chamomile. Safe for skin, safe for fur, and smells like an argument with a garden. Historians still argue whether colonial apothecaries routinely treated animals, or whether that was left to folk healers and stable boys. In Farnsworth's case, it's clear he treats whatever walks in the door, especially if it's limping and has a name. He rubs the liniment gently into Henrietta's ankle. She flinches once, then exhales through her nose, a sigh of relief or annoyance. Possibly both. "She'll need rest," he says. "No more cart rides, no more mango peel marathons, and absolutely no chasing chickens." She only does that on Wednesdays, the girl replies. Farnsworth glances at her. You're local? She nods. I live up the hill with Auntie June. She sells yam cakes and makes everyone drink hibiscus when they're grumpy. Smart woman. She's always grumpy. Even smarter. The girl watches intently as he rewraps the ankle with clean linen and a dab of sugarcane sap to hold the bandage in place. That's so it doesn't slide, he explains. Will she walk again? The girl asks, very solemn now. She can walk now, Farnsworth says, but she's milking this injury for sympathy. Henrietta sneezes. Tobias leans over. I once bandaged a parrot. No, you didn't, Farnsworth says. Okay, I tried to bandage a parrot. You mean the one that stole your buttons? Trauma takes many forms. The girl peers into the open jars and points to a tiny corked bottle with an odd greenish fluid inside. What's that one? That, Farnsworth says, that's distilled toad water for nothing. It was a bet. You blink. A bet? A physician from Port Royal said I couldn't extract anything useful from a Bufo marinus. Did you? No, but I did make him drink it. He hasn't challenged me since. The girl giggles. Henrietta begins chewing gently on the cart's side rail. You sit down next to the girl and watch Farnsworth clean his hands. The shop is filled with the scent of neem and mint now, overlaying the ever-present tinctures of clove and sweat. The sun has turned a deep gold, and the light is slanting across the floorboards, tracing slow patterns across the faded rug by the door. Farnsworth pours the girl a half cup of lime water and sets it on the counter. You've earned that. She nods once, drinks it, and lets out a small, satisfied sigh. Tastes like outside. I'll take that as a compliment. She fishes a wrinkled coin from her pocket and adds a yam cake on top, carefully wrapped in banana leaf. It's from Auntie June. She said, don't feed the goat and don't make him sing again. Farnsworth blinks. She liked the song. She said she tolerated the song. Well, Farnsworth mutters, tucking the cake onto a high shelf. That's practically affection. You help the girl lift Henrietta gently from the cart. The goat stands, weight balanced, ankle properly wrapped, bonnet still proud. With a nudge and a bleat, she begins the slow walk out the door, the girl holding her lead with all the authority of someone twice her size. Thank you, Mr. Doctor. Apothecary, Farnsworth corrects. She shrugs. You smell like medicine. It pounce. And with that, Henrietta and her escort clatter off into the evening light, cart creaking behind them, leaving only a faint trail of goat hair and victory. You lean against the counter, smiling. I liked that one, you say. Farnsworth nods. She'll be running this island by age 12. Then, from the back room, a faint clatter, followed by a chirp. You all freeze. Tobias stares at the doorway. Please tell me that wasn't the parrot. No, Farnsworth says very slowly. I think it was worse. He stands, and from behind the curtain emerges feathers. Many feathers. Oh, Farnsworth sighs. The leeches weren't the only ones who got into the spirits. The feathers emerge in a slow, drifting cloud, as if someone opened a pillow mid-exorcism. They float through the beaded curtain from the back room, catching the golden sunlight in lazy spirals, each one a tiny, drifting warning that something has gone profoundly sideways. Then comes the sound, a low coo, a proud, self-satisfied coo. "Not again," Farnsworth mutters, already marching toward the back room like a man heading into battle. You and Tobias exchange a look, then follow. Behind the curtain is a small preparation space, cluttered with hanging bundles of herbs, a fireless stove, and an empty birdcage now lying on its side. The source of the feathers is sitting directly atop a sealed jar of sassafras, wings slightly outspread, head tilted in a rakish angle, and pupils dilated in a way that would concern any reputable avian expert. It is, unmistakably, a pigeon. But not just any pigeon. "Oh no," Tobias whispers. "It's Reginald." The pigeon turns to look at him, then promptly falls over sideways and begins trying to coo in rhythm. You blink. How? How is it drunk? Farnsworth is already inspecting the shelf. One bottle, once labeled medicinal port, for tincture use only, is tipped, the cork nibbled. A trail of burgundy droplets leads from the lip of the bottle to the shelf, the floor, and finally to a half-eaten ball of dried fruit pulp that now appears to be fermented beyond its years. "I told Tobias not to leave the port open," Farnsworth grumbles. "I didn't," Tobias protests. "I used a cork." "Yes, a cork made of cinnamon bark, which Reginald apparently finds delicious." You crouch beside the pigeon. He blinks one eye at you, flutters his wings lazily, and then attempts to climb back on the sassafras jar like a conquering hero. Farnsworth gently scoops him up in a cloth. This is the third time he's gotten into the tincture. "Is it safe?" you ask. "Depends. Are you asking about the pigeon, or anyone he may bite?" Reginald burps. You didn't know pigeons could burp. "He was supposed to deliver a poultice to the smithy this afternoon. Now he'll be hung over until Monday." You follow him as he carries the pigeon back into the shop proper and deposits him into a padded basket near the window. Reginald promptly curls up and begins coo snoring. You wipe your hands and glance at Tobias. "I thought the cat was the mischievous one." "Oh, no," Tobias says. "The cat just blames the pigeon. They have a deal." You decide not to ask. Farnsworth tosses the half-eaten fruit pulp into the bin labeled "Unsuccessful Experiments and Regrets," then scribbles a quick label on the basket. "Reginald, medicinally incapacitated. Do not wake." He straightens up. "And that's why I don't work with carrier parrots. You get vanity, you get drama, but you don't get dependability." You shake your head and return to your stool. The shop feels different again. Like each minor disaster adds a layer to its personality. The air now carries a soft blend of sassafras, spiced port, and feathery dignity. "Did he really eat a cinnamon cork?" you ask. "Oh yes. Last time it was licorice root. The time before that, wax sealant. That ended poorly." Tobias lifts a finger. "And once he swallowed part of a peppermint lozenge and tried to fight the cat." "I said I didn't want to know," you mutter. Farnsworth chuckles, pouring a small splash of lime tonic into a shot glass. "Here," he says, handing it to you. "A palate cleanser or an apology?" You sip. It's sharp, bright, and just a little fizzy. It tastes like someone bottled the idea of waking up earlier than you meant to, but not minding. Just as you begin to relax again, the door creaks open once more. A boy, maybe 15, steps in with a sheepish expression. "Sorry to bother, Mr. Farnsworth, but my sister says she's got the stomach storm again and also wants more of the sleepy ginger juice." Farnsworth points to a crate near the back. "There's a jug already labeled. Tell her not to drink it near an open fire this time." "Yes, sir." The boy retrieves it and leaves just as quickly, nodding to Tobias, who salutes like they're part of a secret order of overworked siblings. "Is sleepy ginger juice real?" you ask. "Oh, it's very real," Farnsworth says. "Ginger, clove, a touch of valerian. Knocks you out like a mallet made of flowers." You smile. Tempted to try it. "Wait till the goat starts singing." He pauses. "Actually, maybe don't." The sun is brushing the horizon now. The amber light is thickening into something honey and slow. Long shadows stretch across the shelves, and you can just barely hear the call of a lone steel pan drum, a lone musician greeting evening with rhythm and rust. Reginald lets out a small, hiccuping coo in his basket. "Will he be okay?" you ask. "He'll be philosophical in the morning," Farnsworth says, "but fine." You look around at the jars, the labels, the strange calm now settling once more over the shop. This day has seen fever bark, goat liniment, fermented leeches, and a pigeon who drinks better than most sailors. But even the chaos somehow feels comforting, human, full of tiny oddities that add up to something beautiful and necessary. Tobias returns to sorting sachets, whistling under his breath. You glance at the ledger, still open. New entries scribbled in messy ink. Henrietta, goat, ankle sprain. Suspected, drama. Reginald, self-medicated, recovery pending. Boy with sleepy juice, advise bedtime before moonrise. You're about to close your eyes just for a moment when a loud crash echoes from outside. Then a voice. "Farnsworth, I need a tonic for courage, and also to forget that thing I just said to my mother-in-law." Farnsworth doesn't even look up. "Ah," he says, "must be Friday. There are crashes, and then there are declarations." This, unmistakably, is the latter. A shout so loud and confident it sends a small vial of clove extract rolling off a shelf. The vial survives, just barely. The door bursts open, nearly taking its hinges with it, and in stumbles a man who looks like he's either just survived a duel or lost one to a curtain rod. His jacket is partially unbuttoned, one boot untied, and his mustache appears to have been recently and enthusiastically trimmed by someone using kitchen scissors. "Farnsworth!" he bellows again, now properly inside. "My dignity is injured, my pride is in shambles, and my tongue tastes like regret." Farnsworth calmly wipes his hands and turns to you. "This," he says with weary resignation, "is Cornelius Bexley III, former planter, occasional poet, full-time disaster." Cornelius beams, completely unbothered by his own entrance. "Evening, Tobias," he says, tipping an invisible hat. "Evening, sir," he replies, with all the enthusiasm of someone who's been through this 12 times before. Cornelius leans heavily against the counter. Do you have anything at all, that will help me recover from a conversation I absolutely should not have started with a person I absolutely could not impress? You spoke to Lady O'Farrell again, didn't you? Farnsworth sighs. Oh, moan dramatically. I told her her hair looked like baked bread. I meant it as a compliment. You blink. Was it braided? No, Cornelius says. It was just very tall. Farnsworth mutters something about the dangers of similes under the influence. Do you also have something for nerves? Cornelius adds. I may be expected to apologize in public and also duel her nephew. Her nephew? Farnsworth asks. Why? I may have called him decorative in front of the bishop. Tobias lets out a long, slow whistle. I'll see what I can do. Farnsworth moves with practiced efficiency to the steadying tonics section, pulls down a dark brown bottle, a little dusty, labeled Bravery, Distilled. Results not guaranteed. Cornelius watches it like it's a holy relic. Is that the one with the pepper root? Tobias asks. No, Farnsworth replies. That one made people too brave. One man sang opera to a snake. He pours a finger of the tonic into a small glass and sets it on the counter. Cornelius sniffs it. Is that cardamom? Cardamom, gentian, a drop of brandy, and something that used to be lemon, Farnsworth confirms. It won't make you braver, but it will make you care less about being afraid. Cornelius throws it back like a man drinking away not just shame, but 3 previous lifetimes of poor judgment. He slaps the counter. Excellent. I'm ready to apologize and rhyme. Farnsworth raises an eyebrow. Rhyming not recommended. Use complete sentences. Cornelius sways slightly. Any chance of something to help me forget this week? Absolutely, Farnsworth says, sliding a tiny bottle across the counter. It's called Going Home and Sleeping Like Someone Who Doesn't Own a Diary. Cornelius pockets it without looking. Farnsworth, you are a magician. No, Cornelius, I am the person who keeps you from getting banned from every gathering south of Nassau. Cornelius bows with great effort. Much obliged. Then, as he turns to leave, he freezes. Oh, he says, spotting you. You're new. You nod. Just visiting. Cornelius leans in and lowers his voice. A word of advice. Never compliment a lady's hat by comparing it to a parrot, even if the resemblance is uncanny. You murmur your thanks. Cornelius stumbles out, humming to himself. He pauses by the pigeon basket, nods solemnly to Reginald, and disappears into the twilight. Farnsworth turns to you with a long-suffering sigh. That man once paid me in pineapples and performance poetry. Is he always like that? He once tried to patent caffeinated mango jam. He's like that, but stickier during harvest season. Tobias returns to sorting dried fennel with a shake of his head. He's harmless, unless you're related to him. The sky outside is deepening to purple now, stars starting to show through the haze. The shop has grown quiet again, just the rustle of dried herbs and the faint snoring of Reginald. You look around, this time not for a jar or a label, but for a feeling. And you find it. Stillness. Worn wooden shelves that smell like memory. a window that hums with the day's leftover light, and the constant, comforting presence of controlled chaos. "Do you ever close?" you ask Farnsworth. "Technically, around sunset, but people don't get sick on a schedule, and neither do goats or regrets." You smile. A kettle whistles softly in the back room. Tobias is steeping something new. Farnsworth pulls a fresh page in the ledger and scribbles. Cornelius Bexley. Bravery tonic. Surprising restraint. Reminder, hide the mango jam recipe. Also, check Reginald's weight. The bell above the door rings one last time, but this time no one enters. Just the breeze, cool, salt-edged, carrying with it the laughter of distant neighbors, the click of cartwheels heading home, and the low thrum of the island at rest. Farnsworth stands at the door, watching the street settle down. Then he turns to you. "Well, we made it. Through fevers, goats, leeches, misguided romance, and mildly possessed poultry." You look around the shop, now bathed in deepening blue and amber. "Do you ever close?" you ask. "One more hour?" you ask. Farnsworth smiles. "Always." The last hour in the apothecary passes the way the sea does at dusk. Quiet, slow, and holding its breath. The shop glows gold from the inside out. Glass jars catch the lamplight like fireflies caught in amber, and every bottle, whether labeled digestive drops or unicorn dust, do not ask, seems to shine a little more benevolently. You find yourself helping tidy up, not because Farnsworth asks, but because it feels like the right thing to do. The kind of quiet gesture you'd make in a friend's kitchen after dinner, drying mugs with no urgency, just the soft rhythm of cloth on ceramic, and the gentle clink of lids returning to their rightful places. Tobias has vanished somewhere, probably checking the mortar bowl one more time for escaped leeches, or writing dramatic haikus in the ledger again. He does that sometimes. You've already found 3, all ending with the word sneeze. Farnsworth stands at the tall shelf near the door, restacking the tea tins. "Chamomile in front," he says, softly. "People always reach for it when the moon's out." You nod, shifting a small packet of dried anise to the corner. The scent fills your nose, sweet, sharp, oddly nostalgic. Outside, the street has gone soft. The voices have drifted to murmurs. You hear a dog bark 3 times, the bell of a fruit vendor being packed away, and the rhythmic creak of a hammock somewhere up the road. The whole island seems to be exhaling. Farnsworth lights a fresh candle and places it on the windowsill. The flame flickers, warm and steady. "That's for the last wanderer," he says, "in case someone stumbles in, looking for sleep or something gentler." "Do they?" you ask. "Sometimes," he replies. "Aches don't keep time, nor grief, nor that funny itch behind the left ear that only shows up after dark." He smiles. You settle on the stool once last time, letting the exhaustion of the day finally land. Your clothes smell like hibiscus and vinegar and something faintly medicinal. Your hair's damp at the temples, and your hands are dusty with powdered bark and kindness. Reginald coos quietly from his recovery basket, one wing flopped out like he's reliving a particularly dramatic dream. The wind shifts through the shutters, carrying a whisper of sea air and charcoal. The apothecary seems to sway with it, not in motion, but in mood, like a boat gently rocking in its berth after a long journey. Farnsworth lowers the wick on the lamp. Tobias returns from the back, carrying a tray of 3 cups of steaming tea. "What's in it?" you ask. "Calm," he says. You sip.
It tastes like everything that's come before. Ginger, lime, hibiscus, a hint of something bitter, but only briefly. Then warmth, sweetness, the kind of tea that doesn't ask anything of you except to sit and rest. Will you come back? Farnsworth asks. You think about it. The sweat, the smell, the goat, the leeches, the quiet. You say, maybe. He nods like that's enough. The shop grows still, candlelight dancing across the glass jars in lazy rhythms. Tobias is already asleep in a chair, the empty teacup sliding slowly from his fingers. You close your eyes, just for a moment. And in that moment, time loosens its grip. The sounds fade, the scents soften, the world slows. You feel the faintest movement of air as Farnsworth pulls a blanket over your shoulders. "Sweet dreams," he murmurs. "Don't let the love potions bite." You smile, already drifting. The apothecary holds its breath one last time and exhales. Now let your breath slow, as if the air itself has grown heavier, warmer, like a thick Caribbean dusk wrapping around you. Imagine the glass jars still glowing gently behind their dusty labels, the soft clink of ceramic lids settling into place, the low snoring of a pigeon tucked into his basket beside the shutter. The day is done. The customers have gone home. The candles are low. Even the cat, wherever she's vanished to, has curled into a place so quiet, so still, that the walls themselves seem to be asleep. Feel the floor beneath you, smooth and cool after the long afternoon. Listen to the wind rustling the banana leaves outside. Somewhere down the street, someone is humming an old lullaby. Or maybe it's just the breeze playing through a broken bit of wood. That's how it is here. Nothing ever stops completely. Not the aches, not the sighs, not even the laughter. It all just softens, fades, waits for morning. So rest now. Let your thoughts drift like dried herbs in the steeping pot, floating for a while, then sinking slowly, quietly, into warmth. No need to remember which jar held the goat liniment, or what Farnsworth meant by spiritually aggressive parsley. It's all safe now, all tucked away. And you? You're just a breath in the doorway, a smile under the shutter, a story someone might tell tomorrow over tea, with the windows open and the fan turning slowly overhead. You're part of the shop now, and the shop is very, very tired. Sleep well.